Good evening. This is Redwood Wonk. Dave Frank and I, Eric Kirk, are here to talk a lot going on in the national news of the day. I mean, we are reaching a real critical point in national politics, maybe make or break for the Biden agenda, maybe make or break for a lot of things going on in terms of the country being at a real crossroads, and some very serious stuff could happen that has very serious implications for everyone, all of us. I mean, this is really serious stuff. What is going to happen tomorrow to begin with? But we're going to start by talking about the debt ceiling, and it's an artificial problem that Congress has created for itself. We're the only country that sets this up, where we have this agreement that this structure that we can only accumulate so much debt without agreeing to go higher than that. Yes, we have big deficits, but no other country does this. And I think you explained on a previous show that this was, something that fiscal conservatives set up to try to rein in the debt that's been increasing exponentially since Reagan, basically. But we always agreed to it in the past. The Democrats have agreed to it every year through Trump. But now the Republicans have decided, well, we don't want to agree to all that spending. So Democrats are going to have to do it. But you're going to have to do it on your own. And the Democrats wanted to make it bipartisan. They tried to tie it to the spending bill, which the government is going to run out of money tomorrow if they don't do that. Apparently, they've now separated that, and the Democrats are going to have to find some way to increase the debt over the next 3 weeks. Jennifer Yellen was in testifying today or yesterday, and saying, if you don't do this, even the threat to not do it Janet Yellen is having an impact on our credit rating. Even just the threat to not doing it, you are ruining our credit rating right now. And the Republicans are saying, yeah, but you're a Democrat, Yellen, and we don't support that. So it's your fault that we're not supporting this, and the Democrats are just going to have to do it yourselves. And it's just playing dangerous politics, playing chicken with the United States economy. Dave, what you want to explain briefly, a little bit more detail? You've got kind of the details down a little bit better than I do.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit last week, but basically the $28.6 trillion debt ceiling is going to be breached. And I think they're saying, Janet Yellen, as you said, Secretary Yellen said that they need to act by October 18th, or else they will cause serious harm to the economy. But actions will actually have to begin being taken sooner than that, just because of how certain funding mechanisms work. So there will already be an impact come Friday if they don't figure this out. Whether you talk to different bankers on Wall Street or even, the New York Federal Reserve president, they're calling it catastrophic. They're saying that this would be serious harm to the economy. I think that it's hyperbole to a certain extent to try to get action here, because this is such a political posturing moment that is not necessary. This money's already been allocated. And it's really that the party that's in power looks bad when they raise it. So if they can't do it on a bipartisan basis, they fight about it for a while and play chicken. And that's kind of where we are right now. Earlier today, the House voted 219 to 212 to suspend the debt limit. The idea that until December of 2022. So there's two things at play. One is that they're trying to not take the blame for the changing the debt limit, and also they're trying to not put a number on it. So that's why they want to suspend it. And Republicans have said that they will not vote to raise it, even though $7 trillion of the current debt is from the Trump administration's tax cut and COVID expenditures. So that's a significant portion. That's about a quarter of all of our debt.
But it's really silly because most people out of the Beltway don't even know what they're talking about. I
Right.
mean, all this posturing over it, nobody knows. If they feel the effects of it, if something happens, they will know about it. So,
Yeah.
this is really bad politics. And everybody will be pointing fingers, and it'll be who managed just to point the blame. I think the Republicans, if that is the basis, well, they'll blame you for having deficit. Voters don't care about deficits, really. Maybe some rich people do, but most voters don't care because it doesn't affect them on a daily level. This could affect voters on a daily level. What are they thinking?
I mean, the truth is that it's consistent with what we've talked about on past shows, where the Republicans in Congress are trying to block stuff as opposed to pass stuff in general. That's like a disposition. And I talked about it again recently. It could be a first principle that we ought to take care of our financial fiscal house, but we already, for a decade or more, since '08 at least, have been borrowing 40% of every dollar we spend. So it's a debt machine, and these debt bonds are used as collateral in banks and investments all over the world. So I hate to say it in such a simplistic term, but it's not like balancing your home budget. It's not like you take in taxes and you go and you spend out expenditures. Like, creating debt is an important integral part of the process. I wish it wasn't the case, but it is. And so now what we're talking about is posturing. And you're saying, what are they thinking? Well, the Democrats literally just do not want to have footage in the 2022 election available where they're arguing on behalf of spending. And the Republicans want to have just a simple soundbite moment where they could say, "See, tax and spend liberals, they just want to spend." And it's so trite and it's not. It's so far removed from what they actually ought to be accomplishing that I hate to say it's anything more than just kabuki theater about when they're going to raise the debt limit and who's going to take the blame. But it's going to happen because it has to happen, because it's not worth risking the world economy over.
I mean, but we've got headlines explaining it, explaining why it has to be done, explaining what will happen if it's not done. I mean, voters are, maybe not that well informed, but the Republicans have to think that voters are that stupid. I know that they have short memories, but I just don't think that can work, especially when we're spending weeks at a time having this be a discussion in the national media about it. It just seems like all the Democrats have to say is, remember the discussion we have, and replay the videos about it in their own ads about, this is what they said. In fact, Mitch McConnell had made the mistake of saying, "We told you that you're going to have to do it on your own,"
Right.
which is almost like admitting it has to be done. So,
Yeah.
It's just, that's their soundbite right there.
And others too. I mean, other Republican senators are like, "What's the big deal? Just pass it on your own. Take the hit." And instead of just saying, "Well, actually, as a country, as an institution, the Congress has a responsibility to all of the countries, all of our allies, all of our all the organizations. I'm trying to think of like the retirement accounts. Everybody that has a retirement account or a pension or any of these things are affected by this. And here's one thing just to throw in there. There's a couple like Hail Mary moves that can happen too. If for whatever reason the Democrats decided they didn't want to put it in the reconciliation bill, or if Manchin and Sinema are so recalcitrant, we'll talk about that in a minute, but if they literally won't pass the budget reconciliation bill, it's as if the Republicans are saying, just use this in your reconciliation bill. But if not, there is an option that I've seen, the platinum coin. The Treasury Secretary, the president, has the authority to issue a platinum coin of $1 trillion coin, for example, and then just its existence allows the Federal Reserve to introduce money into the banking system that the U.S. government can borrow. So rather than getting formal approval, literally they could just mint a coin or a whole grip of coins with $1 trillion face value, just to get through the next 3 years of the Biden administration if it came to it. So there's all sorts of mechanisms that would allow the Federal Reserve to let the U.S. continue spending.
Why does Janet Yellen sound like she's in a panic about it? Or is that part of the kabuki?
It's kabuki. Yeah, I mean, truthfully, the deal is this. Of course, we want normalcy. We want norms. We want it to be the case that either Congress gets rid of the debt ceiling, or they suspend it, or they extend it. Not admit that the whole thing is based on, artificial IOUs that could be so. If the whole world economy was reliant on President Biden and Janet Yellen issuing one coin or 10, that would just mean the whole thing is obviously a farce. So they can't. It's not that easy. I don't mean a farce, but the whole thing is way more theater than actual what you learn in economics.
All right. Well, it looks like there are moves to get rid of the debt ceiling requirement, but we need to move on to the next topic. Okay, the Cinemankin, as I'm calling it. This is, as we've been discussing for weeks, it's coming down to fore. Nancy Pelosi had promised a vote on the bipartisan bill this morning, tomorrow morning. She previously had promised that the reconciliation bill, what they're calling the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the reconciliation bill, a lot of names, different names are being given for both of them, but that they were going to be tethered together so that, there would be guarantees from both that they would be passed. But Manchin and Sinema, I mean, there are some other moderates that are concerned about the quote unquote price tag and the rest, but Manchin and Sinema have gone for months now without talking about what they support in the reconciliation bill. They were instrumental in negotiating the so-called bipartisan bill, which apparently has the support of 10 Republican senators. They want that passed. They want to put that in their caps, and they just say, let's get that passed, and then we'll negotiate the other. They've been in multiple meetings with different people, particularly Sinema, with Biden and the rest, but they will not say anything about what they support. Reporters can't get it out of them. Today, Sinema was really glib about it. When reporters try to get it out of her, they say, your colleagues say they don't know where you're at. And she says, well, I'm in front of the elevator right now. And it's just really there. Meanwhile, they're and the moderates, some of them are really getting angry over the idea that maybe the bipartisan bill, which is like just over $1 trillion as opposed to $3.5 trillion currently in the reconciliation bill, may not come to a vote tomorrow. But I think Nancy Pelosi is finally realizing she may not have the votes. And it's that simple. And progressives have been sort of expected. The progressive caucus, there are about 100 of them, about 50 of them are saying, no, you promised that these would go together. And no, we're not going to do it. That's what they're saying. We are not going to do this until we at least have some assurances from those two that of what they're going to support. And they're not even talking with us. There's been no negotiations, and it's sort of like they're making it easy because it's like the progressives can't even cave on anything because they're not talking. They're like, totally, because they probably want to just knock it down. I mean, Manchin has sort of thrown out 1.5 trillion as a number, but they're like saying, I don't want to hear numbers. I want to hear what you're going to support and what you think we should cut out. I want to know, what you're doing. And Manchin and Sinema have just refused to even talk about it. And so, we're at an impasse, and it looks like the latest is that Pelosi is saying we're not going to be able to vote on this tomorrow because it will go down. And progressives, for once, are saying we're not going to do this. We won't be taken seriously anymore if we don't make a stand here. And because we are just being totally rolled, and it's we need you to the two of you, and it's really just those two. Other moderates are willing to talk about what they want and don't want. Mark Kelly has said, yeah, 3.5 trillion, maybe a bit high, blah blah blah. And some of the House moderates have raised some concerns. I forget what his name, Gluck, however you say it, has raised some concerns. John Tester, a few of them, but those two are just no, block. And then on top of it, the other night, Sinema attends a donors party with a $1,500 minimum donation attend. I mean, that is just totally tone deafness, blind to what's going on. She's not meeting with constituents at all, not holding press conferences. I mean, it's just totally in her bubble of people of who she represents. Her polls are tanking in her home state. She probably won't win the primary at this point. So I don't know what her thinking is. I mean, it's almost like she's just in there to kill the reconciliation bill or make it, nothing, make it be nothing, because this would be really transformative. Manchin is saying, there's nothing urgent about switching over from fossil fuels. Meanwhile, we got these fires, we got these hurricanes, we've got all of this stuff happening, and they're just going to play games with it and not negotiate. So. It's all come down to this, and this is the Biden agenda. This is it. This is the Biden presidency right here, because nothing else is really working for Biden right now. And he's held meetings with them, and they will not budge. And we're not even talking about negotiation. They're not even putting out anything there to negotiate. They're just saying, no, give us our bill, and then maybe we'll start talking. Dave?
Yeah, you covered the backstory pretty well. I mean, that's pretty much what's happening. And I've been fairly optimistic in general about infrastructure, because it should classically be a win-win, and also fairly optimistic about the party's ability to get Manchin and Sinema on board. But since we talked last week, I mean, it's been nothing but bad news about Manchin and Sinema. On Manchin's side, he's projecting basically and saying out loud, actually, this will pass. We'll get something passed by November 2022. So he's basically saying, why are you rushing? My job is to take care of my benefactors, the people that donate huge sums of money to me, the people whose interests that I represent, my coalition of people who want to knock these progressives down a peg and kind of stick it to them, make them look bad. That seems to be where he's at. Sinema just seems to be off, and I don't know enough about where she's coming from, but from what I've seen, it looks like there's no principles, there's no negotiating objective. She's really just basking in the attention and the glory of being a senator. She's lost the confidence of her own state party. I think 80% of the party voted against her, or voted that no confidence, basically, that they don't have confidence in her. So she's in on quicksand over there. But again, neither of them are even willing to talk about negotiating right now. So that's the way you pose this is, are these two bills going to get divorced from each other? Reconciliation bill is on thin ice in the short term, for sure. So the question is the infrastructure bill going to move forward solo? And what we see right now is, Pramila Jayapal, the head of the Progressive Caucus, she said, here's a quote: "We already put out our vision, and we're going to stick to that vision." And that's it. So it is a standoff. And here's the tell. Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi said, first, she said the infrastructure and family packages have to move simultaneously. They're sticking to that. And she said that the legislative text of the reconciliation bill must be finalized before the House will act on either bill, which that seems impossible considering that they haven't really done much. So all this backroom negotiating that's been happening, it's been top line numbers only, I think. So in other words, there's no way that the criteria gets met. And then that calls into effect Pelosi's, the thing she's been sticking to the most is she's not going to put a bill on the floor that's not going to pass. That's the thing I think that might move. She said, look, I'm not going to put it out there if it's not going to pass. I don't think that will hold if she wants to try to illustrate to the world, look, progressives, you guys do your stand against it and do your thing. Otherwise, she'll have to just pull the bill entirely and negotiate out over coming weeks, which is that's the most likely option. But I think there's a small chance that she sort of puts the progressives in the hot seat with the vote.
Well, she could do that. I think that you may see the squad, just even a small number of progressives, just say, no, we'll kill the bill. We'll kill it. It's that's it, and stand firm on that. And then what she could do at that point, what she should do, is then say, you know what, we're going to shelve both of them, and then turn to Sinema and Manchin and say, let me know when you're ready to talk.
And that's where we're at.
Yeah, when you're ready to actually sit down and talk some substance about the reconciliation bill, then we'll do that. Otherwise, we're going to get on to some other business until you're ready. That's what you're doing, and she should just move on to other agenda items and keep that there. All right. Well, anyway, I've got a prediction about it coming up. So, but we will do that at the end of the show. Till now, we got another topic.
Congress must act. We cannot leave here to go home to our families.
We will not leave this town until we have voted, up or down, until we have voted on direct relief for working people.
Mr. President, you're very aware, because in the committee that we both sit on, we've worked through a process of trying to form an answer to a problem that is coming at us again in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, we will hit the end of the fiscal year, which means the countdown clock will begin again towards when we're headed to another government shutdown.
The generals come to Washington. They testify. A lot to talk about. A lot of questioning of General Miley. Is it Milley or Milley? Pardon me, Milley. About the Woodward's books, and we could talk a little bit about that, about what the Republicans are calling the coup attempt, of him talking to China because he was concerned about whether or not Trump was going to start World War III, whether or not Woodward was really reporting that accurately or exaggerating, who knows, but Milley was basically saying I wasn't revealing anything to China in terms of any intention. And then Representative Liz Cheney came out today and said, I really apologize for my Republican colleagues' questions. They're way out of line. Anyway, so a little bit there about that. But the generals in general were contradicting President Biden. Biden had said, "Look, I took the advice. I thought that we were ready to withdraw. That there wasn't that I wasn't advised that the government would collapse that quickly, and that the military would collapse that quickly." And generals are saying, "No, we warned them of that." I don't know who's not telling the truth. I don't know how clear the communication was, or what. We weren't in the room. But generals are telling a different story. Dave?
Yeah, so this is obviously something that's it's a challenge because, number one, we don't know with certainty what happens in the presidential briefing room. Also, Bob Woodward has a stellar track record of being a very accurate fly on the wall, and so given those two things, we sort of have to use the information that we have available to us. But there's two layers to this that I see it. One is the immediate sort of headline thing, which is the generals and Biden disagree on this. But when you parse what Biden was saying, he was basically saying to George Stephanopoulos on ABC, it was not unanimous. I was not getting unanimous advice that this was going to happen, that withdrawing the way we did was going to result in collapse. He basically was saying he got conflicting opinions. And so that's cover, number one, for him. Number two, more broadly speaking, the generals for 20 years have been telling, if you look at the Afghanistan papers, for 20 years, we've been funneling as a country, whatever the number is, $200 billion, $100 billion a year in there. And they've been saying it's right around the corner. We're doing okay. It's right around the corner. Strategically, tactically, we're doing fine. So there's this a whole generation of thought, inside groupthink about what the reality is on the ground. So that leads me to this piece that the country was in decline, rapid decline from November. I mean, Taliban was advancing for months before this was happening. The writing was on the wall. The decision was also already made. So this is the civilian. This is what people want. This is what people expect in a civilian leader. That when you make the decision that you're going to do it, you stick to it, and you stand by your decision. And history may absolve him or not absolve him, but they made the decision that this experiment was over. And if you look at what Senator Warren was asking Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, look, if we, what were we accomplishing? What would 2,500 troops have done? And basically the deal was it would have perpetuated the status quo. We could have held firm where we are. And is there anything we could have done short of a troop surge or short of a major, massive change of policy that would have gotten this ending differently? And he said, probably not. So in a way, you just picture it's a very, very hard decision to be made, a catastrophic decision. But the question is, was there some kind of lie or cover up or conflict? Well, there was a conflict. The military wanted to stay perpetually. The Council of Foreign Relations, the leader, Richard Haas, he even said, look, we should stay there forever. That's what we do. That's what we ought to do. That's what we should have done. And he didn't say it so overtly, but that's basically that's what the military establishment and the foreign policy establishment thought was the right course. But the president and his civilian leadership decided to go a different route.
Yeah, I mean, and that is not what everyone in the United States wants. That's exactly why a lot of people opposed us going there. And this might be the military philosophy, but that it runs against the grain of what is America, both right and left. That is not what we want. That's not what the last 3 presidents have wanted. That's not what it is. So it's fine that they want to be that way, that we should stay there forever. But 20 years is a long time. If we can't get to a military, create a military in that time that won't surrender without a shot by that time, then we haven't accomplished anything in terms of that. We just haven't. So, so for these military people to say, yeah, went against our advice, what have you been doing for 20 years? I'm sorry, it's your failure. And if it's either your failure and failure to generate the military to do that, or it's your failure in advising to have even started that. I mean, it started that process. It's whatever our mission was, it should have been clearly defined in and out and been done with. I mean, that's just what you do. We do not occupy a country into perpetuity. We don't. That's not our mission. That's not our purpose as a country. And I'm sorry that they don't realize that. I just, that's something I feel real strongly about first. And secondly, the 2,500 troops, probably the reason they weren't attacked is because of the timeline. We had a timeline set. If we'd gone past the timeline that Trump had promised, I bet they would have been attacked. I mean, that's not very many troops. And then that would have been an excuse to bring more troops in, and then there would have been an escalation, so it's just the Taliban sat back because they didn't want to antagonize us until we were out. That's I mean, so and they know this. I'm sorry. It's just, I get it. I feel bad for the people there, especially the women. Promises we made that we never should have made. I would support everything to get everybody out of there who wants to be there. I really feel bad that Americans, are still there. But why were they there so long? If I was there, the minute Trump made that deal, I'd have been making plans to get out of there. Why were they there? I'm not. This is kind of blaming the victim in a way, but why? I mean, it's just, if you're a journalist, I get that. You're there to cover, you're there to do something like that. But if you're, part of a business, shut it down. It's just, and then I really don't understand the parents in Sacramento area who sent their kids on a field trip there, while a war is happening. I don't understand that. I feel horrible for them, but what were you thinking? Anyway, it's just, so, and I'm getting off topic here, but the generals, made these assertions, and they were not blaming everything on Biden. There was a lot in there that they were talking about the failures, but the fact that their military of 20 years and however many trillions or whatever dollars, fell that quickly without firing a shot, and say, well, they didn't have the morale. They felt betrayed by us. I'm sorry, if you didn't create a military that was self-sustaining and a culture, in which they could have the morale to defend their own country, their own culture, then it just wasn't a right fit. We shouldn't be in there trying to make another country like our country. Obviously, our model of a military did not apply to this culture, and our way of thinking of the things. Problem one, right there. So I'm, I don't know. Beside myself.
I would say this to try to end on something a little more positive than with this despair that I'm feeling from you. It didn't have to be this way. So the United States, besides the military component, which was not, we're clearly able to play whack-a-mole indefinitely. That's not even a question. We've been doing that for a decade and it seemed to be working fine. But besides civil society development, you also have to develop, a diverse economy. But what we had was a kleptocracy. Yeah. And so our civilian and economic development plan was misguided. Not to be looking in hindsight, but how could it have been different? How would our presence have made a difference? When I talked to people years ago, many years ago now, they talked about a regional solution. That the real key, the core here, the way out of this for us, the vision end game they had in mind was a regional solution. But when your neighbors are Pakistan, China, Iran, it's just such a sketchy neighborhood, and so it's one of those things where hindsight's 20/20, but it would have taken leadership, global leadership, a very moral economic investment strategy, things that just wasn't, that neither of those were part of our execution.
Okay, we're almost to October. The first redistricting maps are coming in. I had predicted that there wasn't going to be a whole lot of room for Republicans to gain seats in a lot. It looks like it's come true in Texas. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the redistricting map, but it looks like they're opting totally under control of the Republicans there. And it looks like they're opting to shore up the incumbents, which is going to make it very difficult for Democrats to challenge that. Ironically, they're also shoring up the Democratic incumbents. They've moved from 6 very competitive districts to 1. It's basically protecting incumbents all the way around. In fact, and the other irony is that the Democrats, Texas, of course, because of the population increases, have actually picked up 2 seats. But most of the population increases have been around the urban areas, particularly Austin. That's a very liberal area. The Democrats may actually pick up a seat in Texas if they win that last competitive area. So it's not going to be a win for all for Republicans. They can take comfort in the fact that they probably will hold on to probably about 2/3 of the seats, even though Democrats may become the majority of voters there. I mean, so that gerrymander, so it's more of a defensive posture that they've taken, but it won't help them retake the House majority next year. I want to quickly comment on a couple of other maps. Oregon, Democrats were hoping to pick up at least one. They Oregon, because of its population increase and mostly around the Portland metropolitan area, was hoping to pick up one. They were hoping to draw a map that would give them. Right now, they have 4 Democrats to 1 Republican. They can take comfort in the fact that 2 of those were very competitive. Now there will be 4 that aren't very competitive. They were hoping to have 5 that aren't very competitive, but they have 1 that extends the rural area outside of Portland, the suburban area, down and skirting and avoiding Eugene and Salem in those areas that will be very competitive. And then all of Eastern Oregon is the Republican one. And so the Republicans will have a chance to win. It's very competitive. So the Republicans could actually pick up that extra seat, but Democrats have a chance of also picking up that seat. So that'll go back and forth. Democrats can take comfort in the fact that they don't have to fight very hard to keep those 4 seats. Colorado, very similar thing. They were hoping, and they in Colorado. It's done completely by a neutral, 4-4 on bipartisan one. Democrats were hoping again to pick up. They got an extra seat from population growth, but it looks like it's going to be that extra seat's going to be competitive. Could go either way. So looks like a wash pretty much so far in terms of numbers. But Texas, like I said, I think it's going to happen in other states. We'll see if Florida can change things around to pick up much more seats. But as I said in a previous show, I think because of the way we're voting now and the GOTV models, I think that California Democrats are going to reclaim most of those 6 seats that they lost in 2020. New York is probably going to reject its commission model and probably do some gerrymandering there to pick up possibly as many as 5 seats. Maryland can't pick up anymore. They're going to keep their seats, but they're going to reject their thing. Pressure in Illinois on Democrats to gain some seats there. Not quite sure who's going to benefit from gerrymandering this time around. As I argued on a previous show, I think the Republicans have tapped out their gerrymandering capabilities for the most part. We'll see. They can be real clever, on doing it. But Texas, they were hoping for more, and they came. If they did it, they took some real chances, and especially took chances on losing some of their incumbents. They like putting 2 of them in one, and they didn't want to do that. They wanted to protect all the people that were in there, and this is what they have to do.
So I'd like to begin by giving you credit because your original analysis that you did a few weeks back, where you said that gerrymandering in states where the parties are in control have basically gone to an extremist position with very limited room to pick up additional seats, even when they have control over the process. And so far, they were early in that phase, but so far it's played out exactly what you described, so props to you on that. Texas is one of those ones where, like you said, they decided to retrench and entrench and shore up, I guess, what they had going on. And like you said, there's one district that's like a spider that tries to capture much of the African American vote down there. So that's going to be a new poster child, I think, for gerrymandering, for the benefit of solidifying their base there. As far as Oregon goes, I thought Oregon was pretty interesting because the Democrats did have control and they tried to push through a more advantageous distribution, but the Republicans refused to give them a quorum and they kind of boycotted the process. But then when they came back and agreed to look at a redrawn map, revisit the proposal, then they got a more sort of neutral disposition of how it was going to be drawn out. But yeah, it's so that's kind of like a tale of two cities where one, they couldn't really advance their position in Texas significantly, and Oregon it was mild also. But then, like you said, Colorado, where there's a commission, and so like we have in California, it's a nonpartisan commission. It goes in, it's supposed to assess the natural geography and the natural what would be I guess regional or cultural differences based on where people happen to be, kind of contiguous geographic space, the least corruptible version.
And communities of interest.
There you go. That's the phrase, communities of interest. I was trying to think of the word. But yeah, so that's actually, I of course, as a free-thinking, moderate person, I think that's the best model. Bar none, and it would be great if the federal government could make that the law of the land in a Voting Rights Act. Maybe a conversation for another day. But as redistricting goes right now, we'll see how it plays out in some of these other states as the commissions and legislatures hand down new maps.
Yeah, they're going to start coming in, and it'll be very interesting. And as I said, it's actually possible that Democrats gain a seat in Texas, which would be really ironic, because like I said, they only have one competitive district. If you're interested in democracy, that's lost in Texas basically for now, because it's just incumbents all the way, just there. But I wanted to make one more note on that. That map is probably going to be challenged in the courts because it merges two black majority districts, and it could lead to one less black representative in Congress, and that may be a violation of the Voting Rights Act, and they may have to go back to the drawing board, and it may be even less beneficial to the Republicans at that point because they're going to have a real hard time. The other problem they have is there's been significant Latino growth in Texas and no increase in Latino representation. So even though the number of Democrats has been preserved, people of color, representation of color has actually not benefited. And even as gutted as it is, those provisions of the Voting Rights Act stand, and that may be a problem even with the Supreme Court majority, unless they just totally want to ignore it, the Voting Rights Act entirely. And that's unlikely, especially with Amy Coney Barrett all worried about what it looks like. So it's so we'll see. Oregon was interesting because the Democrats didn't want it to go to the totally neutral one, which would have opened up probably tried to make everything competitive. They wanted to have at least those 4 non-competitive ones and just figured they'll fight for that one. Hope more people move out of Portland into the suburbs there in the future, probably will happen eventually. But anyway, any more thoughts on redistricting?
Just a final quick one is that I think it's interesting that you pointed out that the gerrymandering in Texas could be challenged on grounds of basically diminishing representation to one group, because so many of the arguments that are made are that we don't we're race neutral now, we don't target race, but when you look at how gerrymandering works, it's a racist proxy for voting outcomes, and so it'll be interesting to see how the courts view that decision there.
Okay, at long last, the cyber ninjas have come out with this massive report of voter fraud and how Donald Trump actually won in Arizona. Not. It was a total cluster F from the beginning. It turns out the way they counted it, Biden actually got more votes than from the original election. They revealed that they didn't know what they were doing. They were relying on commercial data for comparison stuff. They admitted after experts in court testimony told them you can't rely on that data for comparison purposes. They were, early on had complained about the duplicate ballots, which they thought were false votes. It turned out the duplicate ballots had pertained to damaged ballots and ballots from overseas and a lot of stuff that was like routine. I mean, they just didn't know what they were doing. They were testing, paper for bamboo to see if Chinese would be stupid enough to send ballots in for bamboo. They didn't, comment on a bunch of other conspiracy theories. I mean, it was just really bad. And they left a bunch of stuff out. And then on top of it, and then they also said that they were denied a bunch of information. They're still fighting subpoenas because there's people who want to know exactly what they did, and they're claiming proprietary information. It's like you don't get to be proprietary with public record stuff. Sorry, dude. And they're defying subpoenas right now, court orders, and a lot of questions as to why they aren't in jail and why Senate Republicans aren't in jail there for doing that. But it was a mess, and they're like saying, "No, yeah, okay, we admit Biden won," and they want to go home. Well, of course, now there's a conspiracy theory because there was some leaked report from before, which they're saying is the real Cyber Ninja report, and I know they got some deep state theory about that, and then Trump is I forget what his theory is how this proved that he won. Anyway, it's a big deal now. They're all blaming each other, different people who are advocating for that. And even after this fiasco, they're still pushing for audits across the country. And they're pushing for it in Texas now. And Trump demanded that Governor Abbott, who is under fire for so many things right now, I mean, the collapse of the grid during the winter, because he refused to upgrade it, and his predecessors, the abortion law, which could lead to the loss of tech industry people that has been attracted to the state, not to mention a bunch of other things and multiple lawsuits. It goes on. The lawsuits about the masks. And the COVID, the people, the ICU beds. I mean, everything he's, got problems with. Now he's going to apparently call for an audit, but of 4, in a state where Trump won by 6 points by his count, of 4 Democratic majority counties. And certainly no Republican counties, because we don't want to worry about that, right? And saying, well, it's not just about Trump. We just want to, see if the election was accurate. Why should anybody oppose that? He's trying to make it soft pedal. Meanwhile, he's facing re-election next year. Beto O'Rourke is, gearing up to run. I mean, he's got like a wealth of issues to hit him on, and he's going to hit him on this one over and over again, as well as everything else. I mean, it's almost, Abbott could still win. A lot can happen between now and then, but it's almost like he's just trying to lose right now. I mean, he really should at this point be standing up to Trump, but maybe he can't. Maybe there's just that many crazy people that he is counting on their votes, and maybe he's already just too committed to that on so many other things that he's not going to get enough votes from sane people. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to tap into what you said about this reliance on Trump supporters, because to me that's the issue here. We're talking about Arizona, we're talking about Texas, but it's really about this whole stop the steal.
Yeah.
A mass delusion. That's really what we're talking about, because we are talking about something that we auditing, counting, verifiable evidence, legal challenges. There's no evidence that came up in any state anywhere that any of this is real. So let's start from that position.
Yeah.
Then you say, well, it's political theater, it's team building, it's what we're going to rally around, it's something we could talk about. People get hyped up online and in their isolated, sort of siloed information ecosystem. That Arizona audit was literally a farce. That organization had no experience. They didn't have any published methodology to speak of. They didn't find anything, but yet they still came up with a report that said that election security needs to be implemented because of its critical role in democracy or something. Right. In other words, they ended with the hypothesis at the beginning, some platitude about security. And then so the question is, like, now we could take that forward a little bit. You said Texas. Yeah, they're picking Democratic counties or some arbitrary representative sample of counties to perpetuate the story. Like, oh, hey, everybody, Harris County, right? That's one of the counties that they love to point at. I'm not sure if that's one of the targeted ones, but I bet it is. I'm almost positive. So, because why wouldn't they? But the truth is, like, what do they expect to find? Nothing. They're just going through the motions. But it's not for nothing. It's because of the visceral, vitriolic support that they're able to get from claiming that democracy is in threat and jeopardy because of election fraud. And here's just the extremist position. Congressman Cawthorn from Madison Cawthorn, I think his name is. Why am I forgetting his first name? Sorry. Yeah, Madison Cawthorn from North Carolina. He said at a Republican Party event, if our election systems continue to be rigged and continue to be stolen, then it's going to lead to one place, and it's bloodshed. As much as I am willing to defend our liberty at all costs, there's nothing I would dread doing more than having to pick up arms against a fellow American. So he's basically like just all in on this propaganda of hyperbole surrounding a mythical event, and it's distasteful, it's dangerous, but that's where we are.
Yeah, and Trump is backing all kinds of stop the steal candidates around the country right now, by the way, which is really scary. There's a lot of analysis that the stop the steal is going to be the rallying cry, that this was, basically the starting point, the trial run for 2024. That's going to be the theme, and no matter what happens in 2024, there's going to be accusations of attempts or success of it. I mean, this is it from here on. We all saw what happened with Elder. I mean, he got, the recall got blown out of the water so much that was just going to look stupid. But we saw that he put it up a day ahead of time, right? I mean, that is going to be the rallying cry from here on in. Every election they lose, and apparently every election they win. So, it's it's not going to stop. He's back to candidate against the Secretary of State in Georgia. And that's going to be that is going to be the campaign, and that's going to be the campaign in 2022. And the question is, it's either going to make or break, right? I mean, this is going to, it might be big, but if I'm a Republican, a sane Republican, I got to be worried, because historically they should have no problem winning next year, especially if everything fails with Biden. They should have no problem winning next year. That's the only thing that probably gives Democrats hope of holding on and maybe even expanding their majority, because that is a wild card. That's what keeps the ever-Trumpers. There was a focus group the other day of people who are really unhappy with Biden over Afghanistan, but saying, but I can't buy into that crazy.
Yeah, and it's manipulation for an end, for a tangible end, and which is power, which you've said before. I saw the lieutenant governor of Texas speaking recently, and he was basically saying, go down the list of policies that we've passed to reform elections in the name of election security, and prove to me that it will impact anybody negatively. None of those things will impact people negatively. But I think he said the word actually denying people a vote. And but the truth is that if you're targeting the method where certain populations are, mail-in voting, late night drop-off boxes, if you eliminate those things, and that huge percentages of people in a certain population are going to use them, then you are targeting them. And I don't know if that can really stand up to scrutiny as he described. So the truth is that they are it's voter suppression, and it probably can only be dealt with in the courts or at the federal level.
Bottlenecks, long lines on election day is voter suppression. End of story. That's what they want. All right. That takes us to our last segment. Okay, predictions. Dave, what do you have for us?
I'm going to do a twofer. So the first part of this is, will the debt ceiling and the budget, the passing of this allowing spending after the end of the fiscal year tomorrow, will that pass? And the answer is yes, it has to. I don't see, ultimately they're going to play this chicken game, but I don't think that it's going to be in anybody's best interest to shut down the government and start an economic tsunami. So I think that's going to happen, and I think that'll happen within the 3-week window. But then second part of this is, what's going on with budget reconciliation bill. I hate to go back on a former prediction. I don't see the delay getting resolved in the short term. I think that's going to be a longer haul. So if it's the case that the vote does not happen tomorrow, then I do think that it's gonna be a while for them to figure out how to rein in the Democratic senator's mansion and cinema.
Okay, well, I'm going to say I don't think either bill is going to pass.
Yeah.
I think they're going to go down. I think they're both going to go down, because I think the progressives have to make their stand here. If they don't, then they won't be taken seriously. They won't get people to turn out to vote. They have to make their stand here. Manchin and Sinema, they don't have a social agenda. They don't have, political ideology. They don't have anything except that what their donors want them to do, and that's to block the reconciliation bill and everything it stands for. So until they can get more people in the Senate, it can't happen. Sorry, President Biden. If that means your presidency is over, it means it's over. I'm really sad about that. It's going to have an impact on a lot of lives, but that's just the way it's going to have to be. And the rest of the Democrats, you've just got to assume that you're at 48, and maybe Manchin will switch parties. I don't know what Sinema's going to do, because she's a dead duck person in there anyway. She's not going to be there past that. It's really depressing, but unless they have a return to Jesus moment, which I just don't see, those bills are dead. So
yeah, I mean, lose the battle to win the war. That's what the progressives are gonna do here and make a stand. I think, and that's what you said is we're probably saying the same thing.
all right. Okay, well, we'll see what happens before next week. But yeah, I it's sad to say, but that's where it's at. Till next week, keep thinking.